I just want to give you that.
Okay. Well, do I need to change it?
We're I know what you're saying.
Yeah, thank you.
We have very efficient meetings now.
Is he coming in? This gentleman is.
He's, and we had a gentleman.
Oh, she's gonna be late. Do we want to start for an hour? Excuse me.
I'm gonna sit in I'll get some
Oh, yeah? You like it? Still good?
Yeah, I just finished lunch.
Yep.
Julie?
She's gonna be late. Gonna be late. Oh, perfect. Okay, great. Okay, we're gonna leave. That's all right. Okay, I guess we're gonna wait up there. So, you guys ready?
Yep.
Okay. You guys ready? Yep. Okay. Are you started? Can you stand for the pledge, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I was gonna say, if anybody has your cell phone on, could you turn it to silent, please, or turn it off? Okay, we're gonna start with public forum, and we have two, Mr. George or Mr. Curtis. Does either one of you can go first?
Stand here.
Yeah, there's not really a microphone, I don't, except for this
I
thing.
got the voice. I just wanted to say that the public is a little disappointed in our board, and I am included in that. The badgering that I've seen and heard against our superintendent is not necessary. There's a little sign down the hall here that says no bully zone. I think some of these board members are bullying him. I'd like to see it stop, get your agenda proper, and everything will be fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Curtis?
Gee, thanks, Tom.
You're welcome.
Lawrence Curtis. At the last board meeting, two things that came across the last board meeting. One was the, one of your, Mr. President, I'll address you on this. So, because I don't want to address one board member. But the one board member stated that they haven't had training since 2006. I'm hoping that you push the board members to get training. I would believe that the other ones haven't got training yet. You know, if one, usually you go as a group. I know you get, what, probably up to a year if I remember right, but let's try to push them along to try to get that updated. And also, I know you guys just met new teachers. Same board member mentioned that. You guys would like to address and look at the before they take and do the evaluations, I guess, before the tenure. Totally not the right thing to do as a board, but that's where you'd come across where Mr. Dates was saying the 30,000 foot view, the ones that have taken your board training would know what that meant. As a board, you're supposed to look at it at 30,000-foot view. And Mr. Nodine, the last meeting, was not getting in the weeds. That's where you'd be getting into the weeds. You'd be down on the ground level. Let's get the new board members into the training they really desperately need. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're gonna keep moving. B, the minutes from the regular meeting of September 28th. Could I have a motion, please?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Dates, and a second by Mrs. Allen. Any questions on that? Corrections? All in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. Moving on to C, financial reports. I would take a motion for 1 and 2, the treasurer's report and the warrants. Thank you, Mrs. Kaiser.
Second.
And a second by Mr. Nodine. Any questions on this one?
The report indicates that it's ending July 31st, however, the financials are for August 2022. And the warrants, the same thing, indicates it's for July 31st and it's for August.
I will get that corrected.
So would the report change, right, to say August, or the,
These are the August,
okay, so the
August
agenda
report.
is correct?
Yes.
All right, so the motion will stand. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you. Mrs. Devaney?
I'm back. So as promised, tonight we have some cohort data for you to look at. So this is
Thank you.
bonus points for Stephanie for being excited about data. Let's go to the front of the
This was a
class.
point system? I feel like I didn't get it.
So last time we talked about historical data, so comparable test points over a period of time. Tonight we're going to focus in on our current 4th through 12th grade students and track the progresses of each of those groups of students over time. So last time apples to apples of test to test, tonight oranges to oranges of the same group of students. So under that, I think I hit that, and so one of my big areas of focus from the DEI lens and from the grant lens is to make sure that we're using our available grant funding and exploring available grants to really make sure that we're providing those personalized supports for our students, both those who need intervention support and those who need enrichment support. So those are really two pieces that we can focus in on as we look at this cohort data tonight. So I want to give you just a little background information so you know what you're looking at, and then like any good teacher, I'm going to put you all to work. So when you are looking at this data, just so we're all on the same page, we're looking at scores of a 1 to a 4. So 1 means that a student is not meeting state standards, 2 means they're getting there, working towards state standards, 3 means a student has met state standards, and 4 is exceeding state standards. So 1 is the lowest score, 4 is the highest. When we talk about Regents exams and we talk about proficiency, that means a passing score of 65 or above. Okay? So I'm going to walk you through what you have for this year's seniors, and then we'll divide and conquer in a Class A jigsaw, and each of you can dive into one grade level specifically. So this is data representing our current seniors. So when they were 8th graders, 22% of the students scored a level 1. So that's the below grade level. 38% of students were working toward meeting standards, but still below grade level. 31% of students earned that level 3, saying they met expectations for the grade level, and 9% exceeded that. So if we track, so this one at the top you can see is ELA performance. So on their 3 through 8 ELA exam, you can see as we go through, the students who were scoring the lowest starts at 32% in third grade. It increases in fourth and fifth grade, drops back down some in sixth grade, a little bubble up in seventh, and back down in eighth. Does that make sense? You see what you're... So again, from the DEI lens, looking at both ends of that spectrum, also when we look at students who are scoring a 4, so those students who are above grade level, it starts out with 5% of them. By sixth grade, it increases to 16% of them, and then back down at 7th and 8th grade. Okay? So this is the same group of students over time. This group of students did sit for the English Regents last year in June, and 59% of them scored proficiency on that exam. So they passed. So that would be comparable to the 3 or the 4 here. 12th graders, again, focusing in on math. So 3rd through 8th grade, we can see the same things. At 3rd grade, 18% scored that lowest score. It increases at 4th and 5th grade, drops back down in 6th, comes up a little more in 7th, and then back down again in 8th. Same thing looking at the 4s, students who are above grade level expectations. In 3rd grade starts at 25%, drops down in 4th and 5th, increases slightly in 6th, 7th, and 8th. Interestingly, across cohorts, our math performance here is generally better than our ELA performance. Usually it's the other way around in many districts. So again, this cohort of students, majority of them would be the students factoring into the Algebra 2 score from June, which was 82%, scoring a 3 or 4, that proficiency level. One last piece for the seniors, and then I'll turn you loose. So 4th and 8th grade science, this cohort of students did get through both of those 4th and 8th grade science assessments without an interruption from COVID. So you can see, by and large, our science scores are much stronger than our ELA and math scores, with over 70% scoring proficiency, scoring that 3 and 4, and then at 8th grade over 80%. So a couple of my personal, let me give you the Regents exam. So these students would have sat for the chemistry exam last year with a 69% proficiency. Remember that this was, for many of them, the first Regents exam that they took because of COVID. So a couple of my observations and takeaways from this, in an ideal world, going back to the conversation from last time, if what we're doing is really effective, you would see the 1s decreasing, the 3s and 4s increasing. But we also talked last time about that historical data. If we're saying at 3rd grade, 56% of students are proficient, they're on grade level, would you say that that's an acceptable outcome, that 56% of our 3rd graders are on grade level?
No.
So when we talk about with the principals or with Mrs. Hay about tier 1 instruction, that number tells us we have to do something with all of our students, the regular instruction they're getting. But then when we see 1s increasing, 4s decreasing, that's an indicator that we might need to do some additional enrichment or intervention, and we'll come back to that.
Jen, can I ask a quick question?
Go ahead.
So when you're looking at these and you're basing it off of percentages, I'm assuming that you're grabbing other graduation classes or the class of 2024 and things like that. This is, speaking from personal knowledge, a very small graduating class.
Mhm.
Do we ever consider the class size when you're looking at these percentages? Because 25% is obviously going to be different to this class than the following class.
Yeah, so if you think back to last time when we talked about ESSA and that accountability piece, they don't really care.
Okay.
And for us, that's the really challenging thing about this data, is you could have one student, if you remember when we talked about those subgroups, one student could be 20% of any one of these scores.
Okay.
But that obviously is something to keep in mind. As such a small school district, one student can make a huge impact in these.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So any questions about what you're looking at?
Jen, when you're pointing out the ones and the fours, so if you're looking at this from a bell curve, you got the extremes. This is as a bell curve type deal. I suspect you're going to be talking to us more, and it sounds like you're leading into it, as to with all students where they're going, because we want to see the twos become threes and threes become fours, you know, all the way along. So I'm anxious to hear what you're going to be suggesting about that.
So I'm actually going to let you make that suggestion. So if we can, you have every cohort in your presentation in front of you. So Nancy, if you would focus in on 11th grade, please. Stephanie, 10th. Kim, 9th. 8th, our current 7th graders, and Brian, our current 6th graders. So look over the 3 slides. Look over the 3 slides for your grade level and come up with at least 2 observations. What do you notice about that cohort of students and their performance over time? So those of you who are eager to not have to listen to me for too long, this dictates the length of time you have to spend with me tonight.
Wow.
If you get the right answer quickly. She has a different grade level, you can't copy her answers.
Obviously, I'm going to.
If you have any questions about what you're seeing, let me know. I can help explain that, so you can share some observations and takeaways. In elementary classroom, you hear the teacher say, "I'll know you're ready when you put your pencil down. I'll know you're ready when you put your pencil down." And we can share out.
Should have seen my ELA teachers, then we would know.
It wasn't listed in the job description that you'd have to be a data analyst.
Right? My brain is tired right now, Jen.
So as Brad had pointed out last time, when we talk about data, there is so much to process, which is why you really have all of it that you can go back and look at later and come back with any questions. We can certainly answer those and provide follow-up on those as well. But let's just kind of share out a little bit of, for each grade level, what do you see, what do you notice, and then we'll give you some time afterward to process what you're seeing, and I can talk about from the perspective of someone who spent a little more time looking at this, some of my observations as well. So looking at our current 11th graders. What are your thoughts?
Well, your level ones have only increased, so your twos went from 1 to 3, but your ones increased for ELA and for math.
So-
Math decreased for 6th and 7th, more ones became 2s. Your 4s remained stable in ELA the whole time, so nobody went from a 3 to a 4.
So no real growth from 3s to 4s, but the ones you said were increasing? Is that what you
Yeah, more
said?
students became a 1 for ELA.
So again, more
from
students
3rd to 7th grade.
earning that lower score as they progressed over time.
They did not progress.
As they
Over time.
aged over time, they did not progress and move out of being a 1. More students moved from a higher score into that lower score category. Thank you. All right, Stephanie, how about some takeaways from 10th grade?
I would say the same as Nancy. From 3rd grade, there was a decline in the 4s. You know, students were going backwards really. And then 6th, they kind of picked back up a little bit. Then they seemed higher in 8 for ELA. Same kind of for math, but for math, it's there was a lot of 41% was 4s. We drop down, we keep going down, down, down. We jump up a little bit, but not much.
How about science? Any observations for science?
Went down a little bit, not a lot. In 4 category.
4s became
So 4s moved to 3s.
significantly less.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Kim, what about some observations for our current 9th graders?
I noticed that for math performance, I was, I guess, a little bit surprised to see that level 4 was decreasing in elementary school. So we went from 35 to 18 to 8, so it was a little bit surprising, I guess. And then, but then in middle school, it kind of bounced back up again, so that was interesting to me. For science, I thought that the 4th grade data was also very interesting to see level 1 and 2 were even, but then what a jump to level 3 and level 4.
Right, having those lower numbers at 4th grade certainly indicative of a stronger program. How about our current 8th graders?
Okay, so I am not going to look at this from a teacher background, but I guess the first thing that jumped out at me was I would expect 3rd grade overall in any grade level would be lower because it's the first time they're taking a standardized test and it's across the board not. You know, it's much better. And I see the same kind of hiccups depending on when they missed testing because of COVID. But it seems like even when we're looking at all of them, they seem to be strong in 3rd. The 4th grade science is stronger than both the ELA and math. So it seems like we have some possible concerns on the same areas, no matter who the group is.
Okay, 7th grade?
There you go. Interesting, I mean, keeping with the theme of that we've already started to hear, you know, that there was a increase. I looked at it from looking at the 2s and 3s, and then the 3s and 4s, or 1s and 1s and 2s, then the 2s and 3s. I'm okay. 1 and 2, 3 and 4. There we go. Say it correctly. That there was a increase in the number of students that performed at the 1 and 2 level over those years, from 3 to 6, and a decrease getting to the 3 to 4 level. And of course, the science, there was no science performance test at all for them because of COVID, like you got it listed. So, so there wasn't even a measurement to there. But, you know, in keeping with the same thought, of, there just seems to be a fall off in terms of performance there, for, I'm sure, a variety of reasons.
Okay. How about our current sixth graders?
Well, I noticed the current sixth grader ELA performance, there was like a 70% drop in number level 4s from 4th grade to 5th grade. Almost the same increase in the number 1s, so, the other two numbers in between were a little more consistent, but the level 1s really went up and the level 4s really went down. In ELA, the math performance, there was 0 level 4s from the 4th grade to 5th grade. We had 5 in 4th grade and 0 in 5th grade. That was what stood out the most to me. Really high number 1s in both grades, really, for that subject, if you will. But I noticed that we did really well in science. We have over 75% made it in the 3 and 4 column for that same group of kids. So that obviously is what stands out to me as well.
So I can say that that trend that you all alluded to continues with the 2 cohorts of students that we didn't really zero in on. So that tells us that we've got a couple of things to work on. So you heard this summer about Tier 1 focus that we're really targeting last year, K1, 2, to make sure that those 50% or 60% of students that we're seeing at the 3 and 4 at 3rd grade, we want that higher. But then we also have to have that multi-pronged approach we talked about last time of all hands on deck to make sure that what's happening at 4th, 5th, 6th grades is research-based, data-driven, focused to be closing those gaps. And that's going to take all of us as leaders to be pushing for that work and moving forward. So I think that we hit on all of these pieces. Excellent job. You all get that gold star of stealing my thunder of the slide here. So interestingly though, you all noted that at 6th and 6th grade in particular, you start to see some increases. Now, research would generally show that that transition from elementary school to middle school would cause a decrease in student performance. So that's indicative of a strong transition for our students from elementary school to middle school. So kudos to our leadership team for that as well. And to our teachers as well, who help our students to transition. It helps, it's just around the corner. But that's a surprising piece to me because sometimes we see a drop there when students transition from building to building. And then again, science performance at 4th and 8th is by far the strongest. There is a little bit of a difference between those tests and the level of rigor and analysis that students are required to do on the math and ELA assessments. This year, I believe, is the new science assessment. So as part of, next year, thank you. As part of the revamping of standards, that 4th grade test is moving to 5th grade and it's going to look very different. And each of our science Regents exams over the next few years will transition to a new exam format as well. That really, much like our global exam and the US history exams as they've changed over the last few years, they're very heavy reading and analysis tests. Less the memorization of dates from social studies that we probably took on our Regents exams, and much more read sample evidence and analyze what you're looking at. So those skills that are being measured in the 3 through 8 exams will now be reflected in our Regents exams as well, because the tests are going to be more aligned in terms of what we're expecting students to do. So next steps for us as a leadership team, you already heard about the focus in on curriculum and instruction at the Tier 1 level. We're working on some standard analysis. So the data that you're looking at goes deeper and deeper. There are several layers of that. So for every learning standard we have that's assessed in those state exams, we're able to get a gap analysis of that. So seeing how our students performed comparatively to the region and comparatively to students across the state to help us identify where our students were the strongest and where our students need the most support. And that will allow our teachers to really hone in on curriculum adjustments. So that will continue through our program evaluation process as well. Also, our building principals are leading data meetings to engage our staff in looking at ongoing data for our students and make those adjustments in real time. The other piece, as I alluded to last time, is really looking at that MTSS process, and so multi-tiered systems of support, interventions, but then adding in that piece of enrichment as well. So when we look at students who are 4s at 3rd grade, they are exceeding grade level expectations. We want to make sure that we're supporting those students as well. So typically you see this as a triangle, right? And we talk about interventions and supports for students who are struggling. I think we have to think about the enrichment side of that as well. So if we say in general, tier 3 is about 5%, should be about 5% of students. Tier 2, 10 to 15%. So maybe you have 20% of your students that are needing an intervention of some sort beyond the regular classroom instruction. Equally, there should be about 20% of students that are needing an enrichment beyond that regular everyday classroom instruction. So again, from that grant lens, we're exploring possibilities of being able to use some of our current stimulus funding to look at opportunities for enrichment programming as well for our students to make sure we have several intervention teachers. So as we talked about last time, we want to make sure what they're using for interventions is research-based, highly effective for closing gaps and accelerating learning. But at the same time, we want to make sure that those students who were 4s are staying 4s and they're being challenged and growing at their level as well. Questions? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Makes sense.
Okay, we'll move on to new business. One, certified staff. We could have a motion for A through D. Thank you, Mrs. Allen, in a second. Mrs. Kaiser? Any questions? Anybody?
Mrs. Kaiser.
Yes.
Mr. Days.
Yes.
Mrs. Allen.
Yes.
Mr. Novak.
Yes.
Mrs. Dingman.
Aye.
Mrs. Madigan.
Yes.
Passes 6-0.
Thank you. Okay, E2 classified staff. The board, give me a motion for A2, or 2A through E. Mrs. Kaiser,
Yeah.
and a second by Mr. Dates. Any questions on this group? Okay. Anybody?
Mrs. Allen.
Yes.
Mrs. Dingman.
Aye.
Mrs. Kaiser.
Yes.
Mr. Novak.
Yes.
Mr. Days.
Yes.
Mrs. Madigan.
Yes.
Passes 6-0.
Thank you. Okay, E3 CSE and CPSE recommendations. Could I have a motion, please? Mr. Nodine, in a second. Mrs. Kaiser? Questions on these? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Right, moving on. E4, approval of the Mr. Monroe Memorial Scholarship. Could I have a
Yes.
motion, please?
Good.
Mr.
Second.
Dates, and a second by Mr. Nodine. Any questions on this?
Who will be the person determining?
Who receives the scholarship?
A family would be,
So then it's
in
a,
collaboration with our staff making their
it's not
recommendations.
anything we have to vote on. We just don't, we want to make sure it's not done.
Correct, it'll be
late like
between the
others.
family and our staff.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? would say I think that this is fantastic, and I'm very excited for the possibility to give this to a couple kids.
It's a very nice opportunity for all that he did for our students over all the years in our, not just the classroom, but as a coach. I think it's a great thing that the family has put this together.
Agreed. Any other questions? You ready?
Mr. Novak?
Yes.
Mrs. Kaiser?
Yes.
Mrs. Ennis?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Dingman?
Aye.
Mrs. Madigan?
Yes.
Passes 6-0.
Thank you. Okay, E5, a correction of the school tax roll for the town of Woket. Could I have a motion, please? Thank you, Mrs. Allen, in a second. Thank you, Mrs. Kaiser. Any questions on this? You ready?
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Dingman?
Nay.
Mrs. Kaiser?
Yes.
Mr. Novak?
Yes.
Mrs. Allen?
Yes.
Mrs. Madigan?
Yes.
Passes 5-1.
Thank you. Corey?
I'll do it.
Do you want him to start before I ask for a motion, or am I supposed to ask for a motion?
No, he can just do his presentation.
Okay.
Yeah, so, you wanna introduce Mike? Yes. To the back.
I'd like to introduce Mike DeBatz. He is the auditor that we are working with at Mengel-Metzger Bar, and I will pass things out for you. These are updated copies of the audit that you received in the board packet.
Are these fine with them? Thank you.
These are final, yes. They're final.
It's a final draft. We got some paperwork to do to finalize it. That's why we're still on the draft on it. Just some rep letters and things like that. So there's 3 documents in each packet there. I'm going to focus on the top document, the executive summary. It's a brief, higher level overview of the financial statements. The total financial statements are roughly 60 pages. This is a little easier to get through. Talk about some of the key financial operation items for the district for the 2022 fiscal year, and see if you folks have any questions. So if you want to open right up to page 1, is the general fund summarized balance sheet comparing where the district ended the 2022 fiscal year. And I'm sorry, the label, you got it? Okay, sorry.
Getting singled out.
Sorry, I just wanted to make sure that we were all in the same, looking at the same thing here. So in a nutshell, if people want to know how the district operations went for the 2022 fiscal year on here, the total fund balance in the general fund increased by $625,000 during the 2022 fiscal year. You can see that near the bottom right-hand corner. A lot of the variances you see on this page are really just a result of timing when payments were coming in and going out of the district. But that total fund balance increased by $625,000. And if you flip over to page 2, is a look at the reserve activity of the district for the year, and you can see that really this is where where that fund balance increase really shows up, or where it's going in funding those reserves to help the district in the future. And you can see in this analysis here, the district put about $1.1 million into the capital reserves, $500,000 in the bus purchase reserve, and $660,000 into the building capital reserve for future building reinvestment projects. And then also was able to fund some money into the retirement contribution reserves on the top of the page. So total reserve fund balance for the district at the end of 2022 was just over $6 million. And you can see the district's got a pretty good variety of reserves available to help fund future operations or smooth, you know, the budgeting practices or policies when things change in the future. So a pretty wide variety of reserves available. You can see there, like I said, just over $6 million in total reserves in the general fund. The next 2 pages that we'll see take a look at the general fund budget. On page 3, you'll see the revenue side of the general fund budget. The revenue came in about $850,000 under budget in 2022, driven largely by that state sources line, came in about $1.2 million under budget. Largely due to the timing of when the district prepares the budget to go out to the voters in May, when you're getting information from the final state aid runs, and then some of those are also tough to tell. The cost expense-based aids that come in from the state aren't always known until June, which obviously is after the budget. The voters have approved the budget for the next year. So little, you know, kind of a big variance there, but overall, the budget came in 3.7% under the total budget. Keep an eye on that, but you know, I don't think it's anything to be too alarmed with there. Obviously, you don't want to continuously come in under budget like that, but that was offset largely. On page 4, you can see the expense side of the budget generated $3.2 million in unrealized expense that were planned on in the budget. So that's what led to the overall increase in fund balance. And you may wonder, if we had $3.2 million surplus on the expense side of the budget and we only had $800,000 shortfall on the revenue side of the budget, why didn't the fund balance increase by $2.4 million? And it's because the final budget, included appropriation of fund balance and reserves of about $1.8 million. So the budget included the planned use of some fund balance and reserves to balance the budget. So that's what makes up that difference. Page 5 takes a look at the other operating funds of the district. This is a lot more condensed. We don't have nearly as much detail because the other funds of the district are all designed for really specific purposes. The money that goes in there is for a specific purpose. It's used, and in the long run generally evens itself out. So just a couple of items to note on here. You'll see the school lunch fund operated at about $115,000 surplus in 2022. That ending fund balance does exceed what the federal regulations say should be in the school lunch fund balance. That's really a very common issue we're seeing across a lot of the districts we work with this year. After 2.5 years of fully reimbursed meals at increased rates, we've seen a lot of districts with increased fund balance there, but we do just want to point out that exceeds what the federal regulations say should be there. The other items on this page, just really want to draw your attention to the special aid fund. You can see in 2021 there was about $1.3 million in revenues and expenses. This is where the federal and state grants are recorded, as well as the community center. But you can see this year those numbers were up to $2.3 million. So an increase of about $1 million this year. And that's where those funds that the district is receiving from the stimulus funding are being recorded. So that's why there's such a large increase in the activity in the special aid fund that's related to stimulus funding. And just to note there, you can see the community center does have a deficit fund balance, kind of a large deficit after COVID really hit the operations in the community center pretty good. It's another item to keep an eye on moving forward, is just to see how the financial operations go there. And you don't want to continue to see large deficits building there. Other than that, I think the other items on here are pretty straightforward. The capital projects, the district's always got capital improvements going on and things like that. The last page in this document is what we call the entity-wide statement. This is if we take all of those operating funds that I've just been discussing, put them into a single column and add in the long-term debts and long-term capital assets of the district, similar to a corporate style financial statement. This is what it looks like. And just, I don't spend too much time on this statement because it's not the way the district operates or budgets on an annual basis, but it's required by accounting standards. So we like to just talk about the, you'll see there's an unrestricted deficit net position near the bottom of the page, about $28.6 million deficit net position, which is driven largely by the district's post-employment benefit liability. Every year the district has to have an actuary perform a calculation of what this liability would be infinitely into the future and the benefit you're providing to retirees as well as current employees under current contracts. This year that liability was $25 million, and there's no legal authority to fund that liability in New York State, so that creates that deficit net position you're seeing there. And one other item I just want to point out on here, near the top of the page, you'll see a line that says net pension asset of $7.6 million. That's just the district's proportionate share of the state retirement system as being overfunded in the current year. Shows up as an asset on this page, but the district will never receive a check for that or, you know, a credit towards anything. Just for financial statement purposes, there is that asset there. So if you're comparing this year's financial statements to last year's, and you see this large asset that wasn't there before, it's kind of just an accounting number that's there as a result of the pension systems. So that's a quick overview of the financial statements. Do you folks have any questions about that or the audit or?
Could you explain why the state sources from budget to actual went down by almost 3 million?
I can't speak specifically to it, but generally we've seen that a lot in a lot of the districts. I was just working with another district before I came here that had a very similar thing, but generally it's just a result of the timing and the information that the district has. Because the board is adopting a budget or working on a budget, you know, in the winter into March and April for the voters to vote on in May. And you don't always know exactly what the final state aid runs are going to be when the legislature and the governor get to the budget and they're negotiating. And also some of the expenses in there, or the state aid that comes into the district is based on expenses that are incurred the prior year. So as a district puts a budget out to the voters in April, May timeframe, there's still a period of time where there may be expenses anticipated that will be reimbursed by the state the next year, and maybe those expenses don't always occur. That could be a reason for the shortfall.
It's a difference of from the previous year was 15.6 million. And then budgeted was 17.5 million, so it's a difference of 2 million. So.
Oh, so the change in just the budget. Part of the reason for that was so a portion of that is also in 2021, New York State had reduced every district's budget by 10%.
But then they received
and plugged
it.
Nope, that's what they withheld in 2020 was 20%. In 2021, New York State actually reduced state aid to districts and used federal aid that they received under the CARES Act. That's why you'll see in 2021 there was $336,000 budgeted for federal aid, and nothing in 2022.
It's still a difference of $2 million though, from budget to budget.
Yes, it's a large increase, but part of it, the reason is because that New York State had reduced the budget in 2021 from 2020 levels. So 2021 is lower than normal anyway, and the state is fully funding foundation aid. So there are larger increases in state aid than we typically see in a couple of percent a year. But I don't have information in front of me or, really to go more into that. I mean,
What was your single audit? What did you focus on this year?
we haven't done the single audit yet.
Okay.
We will be coming back in the end of the month to do single audit and the extra classroom activities audit.
Okay.
So if I hear you correctly, there were variables that are beyond control, local control, so some variables of when the state runs occur versus when budgets are designed and have to be voted on. And it sounds like, and of course the changes in the aid that would occur, that's all schools were experiencing that type of a variable factor that they
Right.
hadn't planned for.
Yeah, it's tough, and it does, the effect of those variables from one district to another may be different based on historical budgeting practices and how the district chooses to build the budget on the revenue side. It's interesting because there is a revenue side that's prepared when the board puts together a budget to go out to the voters, but what the voters actually vote on is strictly the expense side of the budget. The district does have to produce a balanced budget for the voters, but what the voters actually vote on is just the appropriations side of the budget. And then the district is using the best information they have available at that time, but it's kind of up to the district to deal with those final numbers when it comes to state aid and the various refunds you'll get from BOCES or, the other big revenue sources of the next year to support the expense side of the budget.
Thank you.
Other questions? Thank you. Did you have more? I'm sorry.
I did, just the one other document that I wanted
I
to
didn't
talk.
mean to cut you off. I'm
No,
sorry.
it slipped my mind for a second. I also passed out a management letter to each of you, and I didn't keep a copy of that myself. Sorry about that. So in the management letter, this is just a couple of items here really that we want to make you aware of to keep an eye on. If there were major issues in internal control, we would report them here as well, or recommendations. But just a couple items we had in here, and I did actually touch on both of them as we were going through the executive summary. That school lunch fund balance is in excess of what the federal guidelines recommend, so just keep an eye on that. The district will have to provide the state with a plan to address that also. And then that operating loss and deficit in the community center. Again, keep an eye on it. You don't want it to grow too large. Make sure it's being monitored. So not necessarily a deficiency we've identified, but something we want to make sure we're pointing out from a financial statement standpoint to keep an eye on. And then we did identify three items from our prior year audit that the district corrected to our satisfaction, relating to some procedural items as far as internal controls go with cash receipts and billings, and working towards a federal procedures manual for the uniform grant guidance. So we do like to give a little pat on the back once in a while when somebody listens and implements some corrective actions. So, any questions on those items? Otherwise, I will get out of here. Thank you for your time.
Thank
And
you.
thank you for the
Thank you.
opportunity to serve the district.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. So if we can go back to the agenda, E6. So can I have a motion for the audit report? Just thank you,
Yes.
Mrs. Allen. Second by Mr. Dates. Mrs. Allen. Mr. Dates, no problem.
Mine says
And-
E5.
Okay, it should say E6.
On the board docs. We're not using board docs?
I work off the paper copy, so I'm not.
Okay.
So we'll work off of these, so what was E5 for you?
E5 is the financials on board docs.
Where's the correction school tax bill for you?
There was a late addition. right?
E6.
Yeah, so this was revised, this was the revised.
Okay.
All right, well, we'll work it as E6 for right now, and then we'll compare. Any other questions before we vote on this? You're ready, sir.
Mrs. Dingman,
Yes.
Mrs. Kaiser,
Yes.
Mrs. Allen,
Yes.
Mr. Novak,
Yes.
Mr. Dates,
Yes.
Mrs. Madigan.
Yes,
Passes 6-0.
thank you. Okay,
Okay, so just a few things that I wanted to mention tonight. Red Creek Central School District received the 2022 School Safety Excellence Award from Utica National at the titanium level, which is the highest level. We've done that for the past, I believe it's 2 years, maybe 3. I think the first year we were not titanium, and we are now at the titanium level. So that's a pretty rigorous amount of reporting and assurances that we follow the safety protocols that we need to be following. We also have won an honor, or an award for our website, so our new website that Chris had a lot to do with designing and putting in place through the New York State Public Relations Association. So Chris, do you want to add anything to that? Just
Yeah, just as we talked from the beginning from this year, we knew that this was something that we wanted to do, and we want our website to reflect our school community, and I think we did that fairly well, and I'm glad that we were able to now attach this honor to it.
Yeah, and I think most people have gone through and experienced some of the things on the website, and there's things that we're always tweaking. As an administrative team, there's not a week that goes by where we don't say, hey, if we can move that around or make an adjustment here, just to improve things. So I think what you've put in place is great. I think it's user-friendly, and we're pretty proud of it. So
good job.
Thank you.
Nice job.
nice job. We also received an award. Chris had a lot to do with that as well, for a video documentary for Logan Corto, one of our students. So I think most of you have probably seen that documentary, so he did a great job on that. Anything you want to add for that too? Or?
No, I'm just happy to have this opportunity just to work with all the students here. Every student that I've spoken to so far has a great story to tell, and I'm just glad to be able to tell that.
Yeah, great.
They're sweeping tonight.
Right. So just a couple updates for you. Junior supper will be November 17th. The PTA open house / district open house, which was a complete redesign for this year, was very successful. We had a huge turnout for that, at all grade levels from pre-K on up through grade 12. So that was a very successful program for us this year, and we will continue on with that. Professional Development Day, I know you can see in Cindy's reflection, she has a pretty significant description of what we did on October 7th as PD. Sown to Grow, IXL are two of the programs that we spent a good amount of time, but we also did kind of a continuation of what we've done from the beginning with what Cindy presented, what's that, 4 months ago now? With her district level data, and then going into our building level information on how we're going off into tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3, and then wrapping it up kind of again with how we're going to move beyond where we are currently with some of the grant funds which Jen had indicated tonight. So we did a lot of that data drive or deep data dive with our with our teachers over on the 7th. So that was a lot of good work, and they also did some specific or targeted data dives with their content area. So science department worked with the science department to really, you know, come through with some of that information. Our homecoming dance was very successful. We had about 72% of our high school population in attendance, so that was fantastic. I just wanted to give you a couple updates on some of the policies that are coming through currently. We're required to survey families regarding student access to internet connectivity. That started last year, really. We will continue that, and we're going to be required to do that in the future. So we're currently working on that. I know Cindy's working on that currently, putting together that survey and pushing it out to our families and looking at different options for that to make it a little more user-friendly than it has been in the past. Just in my opinion, last year it was kind of the state saying you have to do this. There wasn't a lot of guidance on how we had to do that, except for we just had to get it done. And we really worked through that process for a district to make it a little bit more user-friendly.
They've tweaked some of the reporting on who can report on that.
Correct, yeah.
So what I read on that.
So basically, from what I read, is it gives the opportunity for students to have their own voice, specifically in the high school.
Right.
So where before it was a parent outreach, now it's a student outreach, and they'll have the opportunity to actually answer those surveys. But that's correct. Districts now have the option to not close due to snow or other school emergencies. So that is a policy that's recently out there. You can actually utilize your online platform to accommodate those. So right now, I don't anticipate changing anything with emergency days. We certainly have enough days built into our calendar right now to accommodate most of our needs. You know, obviously, if things change due to a pandemic or some other kind of an emergency, we'd certainly consider those things. But that is a new addition into policy that's allowing that flexibility. We're looking right now, the SEL, social emotional learning benchmarks, which really incorporate equity. They're going to have some new updates that they're looking at the end of this month or into November. So those will be coming out to us hopefully shortly, and we'll certainly be incorporating them into everything that we've been doing so far. ELA assessments will be aligned with the next gen standards. Again, Jen mentioned earlier that there's no 4th grade science test this year. That will be replaced with a 5th grade science test next year. So you'll start to see those things shift. In those so there will be a 5th and an 8th grade science assessment starting in 2024. And those science exams are going to be based on the next gen standards. In the fall of 2023, school districts and BOCES will be required by state regulations to have a formal plan for remote instruction. So we actually have to come up with a formalized plan for if we are to go remote. So we will be required to have that in place. We have not started that process yet. Other than this is what we've done in the past when we've had to go remote. New PE standards are fully implemented for the fall of 2023. And the computer-based tests are going to be implemented statewide for the 2024 school year. So Andy's not here tonight, but Andy and the building level administrators are working with their staff right now for shifting to computer-based testing for our grades 3 through 8.
Will there be an option, or is it strictly computer-based?
It'll be strictly computer-based. There are some nuances with that. So if it's a student with a disability, there's some other potentials there and accommodations. So, but we're working through that whole plan at this point. And that's my update.
That makes me question, would that be reflected in an IEP if a student were in need of particular help once that is implemented, that kind of testing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anybody got anything else? Okay, so we're gonna talk about the district goals in a second, but Mr. McDonald left me a gift. Just kidding, he just put it here. Was anybody interested in going to the conference at the end of the month? I will pass this lovely flyer back and forth. Does anybody need the dates? Is anybody interested in going?
It's the end of October. We had talked about that at one time.
Yeah,
We had.
we emailed, I think, back and forth on that.
Yeah.
at one point.
If you go, you might be able to get a lovely stress ball that looks like an orange.
So
I
if
mean,
we say yes, we
I'd
get
be
stress ball?
interested in going myself. I'd
Yes,
like to go.
okay, so, no one is currently signed up,
Can we get?
off the board, so, I would suggest letting Missy know if you're,
Okay.
I can
yes,
let her know.
okay.
Okay.
Does anyone else feel like they can commit right now?
I think the dates, what would it remind me of the dates? It was October.
27, 28, 29.
I have actually them right here,
Yeah.
correct.
I've got that on my desk now, but it's been 27, 28.
29th. And it's
Yeah.
just in Syracuse, so
Yeah.
it's, you know, we don't have to stay overnight.
I would just go the first 2 days. Because it's a Saturday.
Oh, it would definitely be a great team thing if we could make it. Thank you for that reminder. So, if you can't, stop laughing. If you can't commit right now, it's Wednesday. I would say that we at least let Missy know or let the superintendent know by the end of the week so that they can make sure that we're registered. And if you don't commit right now, I'll send you a nagging email tomorrow or the next day to remind you. Okay, so for the people that have attended, it's really great. There's a lot of cool things to learn and see, and it's close. So
Right.
So we have Brad as a definite,
I think it's
Kim is a maybe.
Kim as a maybe.
and so the rest will be nagged by Kate tomorrow.
Is there anyone who needs accommodation?
I don't think so. If anyone was interested in going, would you just drive back and forth?
Yeah.
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 Okay.
Because I'll just do the first 2 days. But I've got
Okay.
to come in then.
Great.
Okay. Okay, great. So, we recently learned about doing district goals in open session, so we're gonna do that now. If you could possibly pull up the document that was sent out.
That's under, from Nancy and the board docs.
Yes,
Or
yep, or there's the regular email that I forwarded to you,
Yeah.
could be anywhere between 4 to
It
8
was
days ago.
Tuesday at
Yeah.
12:44.
Thank you.
What was it, what you had? What day?
Tuesday
Tuesday.
at 1:45.
Did anyone make additions that would have been in Word docs and not the Excel sheet?
No.
Okay.
Okay, good, because I didn't know the answer to that question. So, we spent quite a bit of time last year talking about categories because, and anyone that was on the board more than a year ago can correct me, but I believe that we added that additional planning, or was that 2 years ago? Okay, we added that planning last year.
Last year.
So I think if you glance down, most anyone who made a suggestion kept to those same 4 categories, so I would suggest that we discuss them as those groups, if that works for everybody.
That'd be great.
Okay, all right, so we're gonna start with academic then. And if you don't have last year's in front of you and you need to switch back and forth, it's on the website as well. So I can't speak to board docs because I don't have that one open, but if you swing down to the suggestions under academic, do you want to scribe?
Sure.
Mind? Okay,
Yeah.
great, thanks.
Scribe.
I know. I just remember calling Sue Cook that last year, I feel like, so I like that word. So, all right, so anybody got any thoughts about maybe some of the suggestions?
Yes. So the very first suggestion, provide a strong academic experience that promotes growth in reading and mathematics benchmarks. I like a portion of that, but I also wanted to add in all areas of the district curriculum. So my suggestion is to use last year's, but then merge in a couple of the suggested, suggestions.
So I think it was brought to our attention by some recent presentations, that there was an opportunity to work in some of this into a goal, and personally, I would say it's probably this first one. So, you know, we don't have to stick to these suggestions, but if we wanted to, maybe finesse this first one a little bit to be a little bit more academically diverse, to include some of the things that we just learned about.
Well, I'd be interested to hear how you want to make it diverse.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm thinking that if, I'm gonna steal this from you, Mrs. Tiffany, but if we can use some of maybe the key phrases that she has been using a lot, about,
Do you want me to share this with Jen?
Could somebody share it with me as well?
oh, you were in the email, I'm sorry.
No.
Okay. Do you have something you can pull it up on?
Sure.
Okay, good.
So as you're doing that, you're talking about,
Doing,
Jen, do you want to take this and do you want to give
I
a
can-
suggestion, since it's the curriculum is the more
Thank you.
focus?
you're talking about, everything that we've seen in the last two meetings that
yes.
Jen has provided, that gives us a pretty good platform of a jump off platform with that, the data, run by data.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I think the fifth bullet that says provide a balanced culture of responsive enrichment and intervention opportunities to ensure that all learners are challenged and engaged at their personal level of achievement does cover what Ms. Diviny has been discussing.
Can you bring us right where you're reading that, because it's hard
It's
to
the
hear.
fourth.
Fifth point down.
Fifth,
Fifth point down? Okay.
fifth.
So it's funny because I feel like last year's goals were specific, but yet generic enough where it covered what needed to be covered. So I don't want to get like super granular where it might be too much, if that makes sense. So I personally want to use the wording of last year, but if we need to add in a little bit more, I'm good with that, but not way too deep where it's very, very specific.
So the only thing I would say too is that did we actually meet this goal? You know, I mean, that's
That one's
obviously
last
part
year's.
of,
I added this language here just because of how it was worded.
Go ahead.
part of the process is to obviously make sure it's attainable and that we're working towards it. So,
So as you say that, before we go further, are you talking about having a goal that's,
Thank you.
that we're measuring the success or failure, if you will, of a goal at the end of the year? Or is this part of the journey of developing, of moving forward? Is a goal then only an endpoint, or is a goal a guide?
I feel like it would be a guide to then drive a goal for next year.
Correct, that's what I'm thinking.
I didn't know there was a right answer, Brad, I was gonna say both, so.
Yeah, because, if we'd have to be very specific if we wanted a end goal, if you had a goal that had a definitive endpoint that had to be measured. And that would be very tough to do, and I don't think that's fair for long-term development and growth.
No, I understand what you're saying. I think what I was trying to get at is that right now, if we were to add in something, I mean to keep picking on you, Jen, but off of the last two presentations, we know that that's a focus for us right now.
Absolutely.
So, maybe it's not an end-all goal, but at least maybe it's part of this guide that you're talking about, and that we know that we're at least taking steps to promote what we're looking for academically, whether that's enrichment or more support or any of the things that we've discussed over the last two meetings.
Well, the triangle you put up there is almost like a bell curve, that you had the triangle with the tiers, really, of, you know, what's occurring on both ends. And this one outline here that we just read, that Nancy read, really talks about that. It's enrichment as well as intervention, you know.
Can someone explain to me what that might look like from the classroom standpoint to ensure that all learners are challenged and engaged at their personal level of achievement? Like, I guess I think it's a great concept, but
So not everybody is gonna move from a 1 to a 2, or a 2 to a 3, or a 3 to a 4. But as long as those students have their individual goals or benchmarks, you know, you need to be able to have them enriched or grow within that. It's not for us to decide what those benchmarks are. You know, we develop the goals, the superintendent takes them over with his administrative team.
So is your question based around, is that
I was just
too
trying to understand, is that,
specific?
are we getting, like, it's a great concept, I love the concept, it's very much what Mr. Vinnie alluded to in the presentations, and I'm just not sure that's like is that a board member level goal, or is that a individual campus level goal? You know,
Are you saying that if we were to, let's just say we came up with the same exact academic goal that we had last year, and then basically what you're saying is something like that would be the next level down
it
for
just
implementation?
feels like that to me,
Okay.
but maybe I'm misunderstanding its context here.
I think that's what I meant when I said, like, we keep our district goals a little bit more generic, and then the administrators, you know, like you said, for each campus, that goes a little bit, another layer deeper, with more specifics that maybe were fanned out in these suggestions.
So if we were taking that particular suggestion that we were just discussing, would it make sense to just take the first half of it? So if we were to keep the same goal roughly for academic from last year, but then add in, provide a balance of culturally responsive enrichment and intervention opportunities, what if it was to stop there?
Like take out providing diverse educational opportunities for all students and add provide a balance of culturally responsive enrichment and intervention opportunities?
Nope, so go back up to like the top, so we're looking at like the current academic goal, and so it would start with continue reviewing.
Right, so continue reviewing the district's curriculum to ensure alignment district-wide and within New York State standards while providing, and then we would add in
To
a
the word
balance of culturally
opportunities.
responsive enrichment and intervention opportunities.
That makes sense.
I mean, does that,
It's the same thing, different wording.
Right.
Diverse
Yeah.
educational
Exactly.
opportunities with culturally it's the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Just the updated wording, because culturally responsive is the pendulum swing right now.
Well, it gets as specific as I think we may want to be, without getting, as she said, getting granular.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same thing, just updated language.
so we're looking at this one, right here. So thoughts on that? I mean, I think if you look at the suggestions that came in, I mean, they're really, at least for academic, they kind of all are going around the same idea,
Same,
right?
yeah.
I'm just thinking that would give us, puts a little bit more depth to it than last year. Obviously that we're reviewing it and we're trying to enhance the goal.
Yeah.
Seems there's alignment with the strategic plan with some of these too,
Oh, okay. Well, good. That's great.
which will essentially be the building levels goals.
Okay. So that looks,
It was all those.
level enough? Okay.
So
from-
is
so from the top?
our scribe got?
I know.
So we're only gonna have one academic goal?
We don't have to only have one academic goal. When we did this last year, we decided that 4 goals, and I don't really remember how this,
Well, the
How we got to
the
this.
guidance
To the-
guidance we're given was I mean, you could go all day.
right, but didn't they say like
Goals.
4 to 6 or something, 3 to 6
3 to 5,
hours?
3 to
Yeah,
5 are manageable, digestible, and what they hit. And then the key is making them specific enough without being, using again her word granular, but it gives latitude to administration to then implement.
right, so,
And it's language enough there to understand what needs to be done.
right, and we, I think when we put these together last year, there was a lot of really broad categories that we were trying to hit, so, doing it like this gave us an opportunity to kind of, set goals for things that we thought were, needed, improvement overall, and that we could work towards for continuous improvement.
So is that yes?
So
Only
it's
gonna
not,
have one academic goal?
so as far as I understand, no one has brought up having more than one academic goal yet. It's not that we can't, we just need to have that discussion. And if they can only be academic goals if that's what we wanna do. We just need to, come to a consensus.
I think there's a lot in that one
was
academic goal,
just gonna
as you
say
read
the
it,
same.
it's not one goal, it's,
Right.
it's multiple goals wrapped in one phrase,
Yep.
really.
Can really be
So from the
dissected
top?
down.
Yep. I continue reviewing the district's curriculum to ensure alignment district-wide and within New York State standards, while providing a balance of culturally responsive enrichment and intervention opportunities to ensure that all learners are challenged and engaged at their personal level of achievement.
No. It would have stopped after opportunities.
Perfect.
That's what we just talked about. It doesn't have to, but that would have,
So we're not talking about social and emotional support this year?
well, we don't have to. I think if we were gonna go more than that, then my personal opinion would be
Make another goal.
make another goal.
Oh, right, it's a bullet within an academic goal.
As a second goal, you mean, second academic goal? Yeah, absolutely, if that's what we want.
So one really academic curriculum based and one social emotional based.
Yeah, that
That's-
sounds
that's fine.
acceptable and
Yeah.
doable to me.
So that would be the third suggestion down, is that provide all students with appropriate social and emotional supports.
Mhm.
Is that the one you were thinking, Nancy?
Mhm.
Thoughts?
So we're saying that these goals would be this broad at the board level. And there isn't really anything that's measurable in that goal. And to me, it seems like that says something that should just be assumed that we're doing. Provide
Well, it's
students-
clear that we're not though, because Jen has now spent 2 meetings pointing out the deficiencies of our academics.
Right.
So I think every presentation, every conversation that we have, every document we review, yes, we should be doing it, but I think the level of a district goal is also to explain that, because I'm not sure everybody understands that. I'm not sure if I hadn't sat on the board that I could tell you what the goals of the Board of Education or the district were. But I think that's also probably why we are involved with strategic planning and superintendent's goals and things like that, so that then here's that broad goal that's almost obvious, and then here are the subsidiaries off of that that will actually do the implementation. So when we talk about superintendent's goals, when we talk about strategic planning and the goals that come off of that, we can clearly say, do these support the district goals, and will they fall out to measure that?
So the measurable pieces come in the levels below the board.
Yes.
Right. It's their job to then implement plans to meet those goals and show us how they're gonna meet those goals, right?
So we can definitely add another goal for social and emotional.
I agree, I think we should, I think it's really important.
Okay, so I just need to glance at these really quick.
Yeah, so the third one down hits on that, and then the seventh one down, implement strategies and programs.
The first one in black.
Or the first black
Thank
one,
you.
right.
Can we
I like
combine those?
that first one in black, because it also, you know, addresses staff and having a consciousness about what their needs are through
Right.
times as well.
So my only like concern about that is I'm not sure I agree with implement.
Well,
'Cause I feel like maybe-
provide or support.
Yes, I'm just thinking it's might be the wrong word for
Right,
us,
yeah.
but I do like that one.
Enhance maybe.
Enhance.
There's enhance in there already.
Can't use it twice.
Can't use it twice, yeah.
Support, well, support's already in there.
Provide.
Provide strategies, program services.
Yeah.
Or continue
Sorry,
to
what was-
improve.
I don't know, there's been, now we're up to 2 suggestions, so I don't know, because when you start to write it down, Brian Noden's gonna yell at someone else.
Well, actually, the strategy's already in place with the MTSS and other building level programs, or programs that are in place that are helping start to meet some of these things, some of the things they're doing in the classrooms that we hear about. They're, you know, I'll probably say it wrong, somebody can correct me, the circle time, and where they have some meeting opportunities for students.
So do you think
Yeah.
that
So-
better word is continue?
Continue, because we don't want to assume it's not happening already. And that's what Brian just.
that Solve to
Grow program.
To
Yeah.
review and assess.
Can you say that again, I'm
Doing
sorry?
it. To review and assess, or in some way. Because you're right, we should be doing.
Clearly need to
That's
provide
already.
additional
Yeah.
support for our kids.
Say that again?
We need to provide more
Okay.
support for our kids.
Okay,
I'm saying we're
so,
not doing it right now, but we need to do more.
okay, so why don't we change implement to support?
Mhm.
And then it kind of does both?
Mhm.
Is- You feel like that's a strategic plan alignment?
Mhm.
Okay.
Right.
Did you really just write support dot stop?
You're truly not implementing.
Right,
Or implementing.
yeah.
You're supporting.
Okay,
Yeah, right.
all right, I think.
There you go.
So what did we?
What did we decide on?
So we're the first black comment there, that then,
Why don't you read it aloud so the crowd can hear it? Yeah.
Can we
Go for
word
it,
it so
Kate.
Reg,
there's
you
like
can-
comments or commas instead of,
slashes.
yeah, I don't like this one.
So it would say support strategies, comma, programs and services to enhance the social, comma, emotional and physical wellness of both students and staff.
Yep,
Sounds good.
What do we think?
Good.
got it. Nice, Jim.
Communication.
Yep. Okay, so, so I think that, and after other conversations here in the boardroom, I think transparency is still, common ground for a need. If you, obviously there were a few less suggestions for this one, but I think they kind of flow all around the same idea. I do like the positive relationships, so whoever made that suggestion, good job. What are our thoughts on this one?
Can you give an example, so as we're having a discussion of what's failed to be transparent?
No, I just mean that we've had a couple of people speak about the importance of transparency. So that was in our goal from last year. So
Right.
I'm saying that I think that we should just at least hold that communication and transparency theme.
Sure, yeah, I was,
Yeah, no, I wasn't,
from what you said,
I'm sorry, I think I
Yeah.
misspoke.
For communication, I think last year's goal is right on point. So I would like to keep it just as is. And/or add a little bit to it, but maybe start with that.
yeah, oh, yeah.
You like this one?
No, he said, she's talking about.
No, she's talking about this. Mhm.
From you, Kim, you'd say from last year's,
Yep.
yeah.
Establish new and effective ways to improve communication and transparency between the school and the community.
Well, we already.
Well, I don't think there's gonna be new, right, like, we're still using Parent Square, it's not gonna be a new form of
They're
communication.
using the Facebook now.
So that's not what we have on this sheet as the current one. Can you
The
read
one
that
that's
again?
on our
That's
sheet.
what's on the website.
Okay. Establish new and effective ways to improve communication and transparency between the school and the community.
First
So there's a couple words
are-
different.
First couple words.
Yeah, the word new is not in this.
So,
So was this a?
I don't think we should say new platforms.
Yeah, I
We're
agree.
using Parent Square emails,
What?
that's not new.
Oh,
Kim just threw me
Go
under the
ahead.
bus if somebody wants to
Sorry.
take a note.
So sorry.
All right, so we're gonna forget what I just said because apparently the superintendent is the only one that can read that paper since I obviously didn't.
Me
So the
neither.
current communication goal is utilize all effective platforms and methods to improve communication and transparency between the school and the community. Which means, I mean, the whole end of that goal is exactly the same as it was 2 years before. So are we comfortable in carrying that over or we wanna make?
If that's been a goal for 2 years, do we feel like we are accomplishing it? I mean,
It's just the last section though. So like the second half of it was, so it used to be establish new and effective ways, ... And now
Utilize.
it utilize basically what we have
mhm.
to continue communication. But it's worded a little better than what I'm saying.
So what's wrong with the first bullet then? The families and members of the community will be provided with a clear and predictable communication related to safety protocols, academic expectations, and support services that are available. What else are folks looking for communication about?
Well, I
So we
don't,
have the methods down.
Could describe clear and predictable then, so we could grasp that.
Predictable, I would say, would be continuing to use Parent Square. That's a predictable method, that's what we're all expecting to get out.
Sure. I mean, I'm saying, I don't have a student here, so I mean, asking to demonstrate, or what would be predictable, so that's a case as a parent, the predictableness of that.
Okay, so you're saying what would you receive as a
you're not gonna
parent?
Parent
You're not
Square,
gonna-
but you're a taxpayer and you want
Right,
to
but,
them.
so that's, I'm asking for all those people that, what defines clear and predictable, that's all.
Yeah.
You know? So you just said predictable, what's clear? Because that seems like it could be, you know, a rather, you know, what's clear to one person isn't gonna be clear at all to someone else, and a lot depends on what
Method.
what methods they happen to be using.
So some communication is a phone call, some is Parent Square, some is an email, right?
Some
Some is a
school messenger.
website. Mhm.
Didn't we talk about this last year
We did.
about how do you get to the person out at the end
Mhm.
of Soda's Road or something?
Mhm.
Right.
So what is our method for that? How are community members getting,
They have the
non,
community members that are
Facebook and the
not,
website.
non-parent community members? What is the current protocol?
So I think we talked about this because I think it depends on what it pertains to. So, you know, we had a board member on the board before that was, had asked that same question. and, you know, how was she getting communication? So, the pamphlet, the
Newsletter?
thank you.
Newsletter, yeah.
Need a cup of coffee, goes out to everyone, but, you know, a district member that doesn't have a student in elementary would not be getting a call reminder about a roller skating party. So it would differ depending on what the matter was pertaining to.
I would say that predictable, that piece there means like consistent. That, you know, if something is happening at the district, you can expect that there's gonna be a piece of communication that goes along with that.
If it applies to you, you mean?
If it applies.
If it applies to you, yeah, there'll be different situations that apply to different people throughout the year. But if people know in the community that it's consistent each year, something's going to go out, whether it's newsletter or whether it's a parent square or a phone call from the superintendent. I think I like the word predictable in there.
Do you think it would be better used to replace predictable with consistent though?
Yes.
I'm only asking because
Yeah, I don't think it
Either
matters
way?
either
Okay.
way. I think they should mean the same thing.
Are we getting too wordy with that first suggestion? There's a lot of words in
I
there.
was reading the long goal from last year.
Kim,
first
Kim,
goal.
can
You're
you
totally
see
right.
The first one, the first new suggestion?
Mhm.
Okay.
Could we take out, could we take out families and members of the community? I mean, that's everybody here. Like if we just take that out and keep with the beginning, I guess between the school and community, never mind.
So what do you say,
Provide
say
consistent
provide clear
communication.
Yeah.
You're right,
Between school and community.
because it's already said in the
Yeah.
original goal, so you don't need to repeat the same thing again.
right,
So if we use the current goal and just continue on after that with a merge of the first suggestion, we don't need to start off by saying families and members of the community, because it's already
Okay.
said.
So what are we pulling from that first suggestion? What are we adding into the original goal from last year's goal, from the top suggestion?
What if we said utilize all effective platforms and methods. Sorry, I keep scrolling back and forth. To provide clear, and we're not saying predictable, what are we saying? Consistent communication related to safety protocols, academic expectations, and support services.
Okay.
Can you just read that back to me?
Nope. So we're starting with utilize all effective, right?
Yeah.
Platforms and methods to provide consistent and clear, or clear and consistent.
Clear. Yeah. Are we saying clear?
I don't think we need to.
Okay. To provide consistent communication related to safety protocols, academic expectations, and support services.
Yep.
What do we think about that?
I think one of the things that we've experienced though a little bit is when we might hear that somebody hasn't heard something, and it wasn't because the information wasn't out there. Again, it might just be whatever platforms people use, and it might be something they hear after the fact. It might be something that's going on, but it wasn't something that particularly pertained to them. Didn't mean that they were left out. So we'll never be able to, in my mind, to fully provide all the information to all the stakeholder groups, no matter where they fall, whether they're a parent, a family, a grandparent,
Right.
people that have no children in the district, they're retired, and the information that they may get doesn't mean because they don't get something, doesn't mean it wasn't there. So I think we have to be, communication can be a two-edged sword when you're looking at whether or not, is it happening or is it not?
So I
You
think
have
that,
to, we have to be cautious in our measurement of that.
I think the website, though, because we've discussed that, I think the website is a good opportunity because, we saw it as a problem because it wasn't very user-friendly
Right.
before, so,
Correct.
you know, now if we continue to try to use, instead of finding new ways, but try to be more consistent with what we have, you know, hopefully it will also, those people that you're not always gonna get, you continue to put out there that there are opportunities to find it, even if it isn't directly, pushed out to you.
Right, right.
So a couple things, right now we don't have the word transparency in the school. And as I was writing it out, I mean, so we talk about safety protocols, academic expectations, and support services. Again, are we covering everything? Are we being too specific by calling out those three things?
Can you read it out loud again?
Utilize all effective platforms and methods to provide consistent communication related to safety protocols, academic expectations, and support services that are available.
So when Raina sends out a call about the reminder for the junior supper, what does that fall under?
So what if we
Support
take that
services?
out? What if we say to improve communication and transparency? Instead of listing the specifics of,
Right.
what did we
Well,
have? Safety, academic, and support services.
Well, then we may as well stay with
With what we
the
have.
goal, yeah, exactly, the existing goal.
I think we can list them out, but I think if we do it, then we have to say something like,
Et
How many
cetera.
events or?
Can we say including but not limited to, or something like that? Or is that way too
It
vague?
just seems, yeah, it just seems like we're getting too deep with that.
I don't think we have to list them.
I don't think so either.
No, you're right. No, the specifics.
Because then if something is missed, then it's, well, what, you know, how was
You've
it missed,
opened the
it's a
door
goal.
for-
Yeah, I mean, I think there needs to be all of that communication for all of those categories, plus some. So I think if we just drop that, everything would be notable underneath that.
Right.
Thank you.
We've already done an academic one, so to have academic expectations listed in here, we've already got an academic goal that will have an underlying means of how it's communicated as you work down at the next layers, how that's communicated out. That's not our role to do all of that. That'll be the role for as it goes out from the superintendent to the building levels.
So what if we add the word consistent to the existing goal? So utilize all effective platforms and methods to provide consistent communication and transparency between the school and the community.
Can we have consistent and dependable? Or are they saying the same thing?
That's the
I
same
think it's
thing.
the same.
I agree that consistent should be in there.
We put too many adjectives in there that can be measured in so many ways. You know, we have to be careful of that.
I like adding consistent to it, keeping it similar.
I could get behind that.
Can you read that out loud one more time? Sorry.
No, you're fine. Utilize all effective platforms and methods to provide consistent communication and transparency between the school and the community.
I like that.
Huh?
Write that down.
Great. Okay.
Okay. Okay, let's keep going.
We have financial.
Yes, so I'm gonna read it off my screen.
Right. Can't trust that.
So the current is last year's maintain responsible budget practices through the strategic use of resources in order to support our facilities and academic goals. Thoughts?
I like on this first suggestion where we talk about maximizing opportunities, especially with all the grants that we can get, and now Stivity in charge of all of that. I like using maximize opportunities somewhere in there.
If, I would only say though, if we were going to do that, I think we have to kind of keep it as less specific as possible, because it's not, we're not the ones that actually do it, you know
I
what I
don't think
mean?
we have to necessarily say given by federal and state,
That first,
Just maximize.
maximize opportunities
Okay.
available,
For all opportunities.
yeah.
And, from the second suggestion, I like the very last couple of words, well-rounded education. We can consider working that in somewhere. If it fits.
Well, we could break it into two if we needed to.
Yeah, so again, I like our
Doesn't tie back to an educational goal though, I mean, we
Like
were talking about
academic, you mean?
education, we covered all that diversity in there. Like, I don't think it needs to be reestablished in the financial side, I think you've established a goal up here. Now you need to figure out how you're gonna pay for meeting those goals.
Right.
I mean, that's really where you're at.
So do we just keep the current financial goal?
We cut a sixth grade teacher this year, and it was told that we weren't fiscally responsible to keep that teacher. But we're clearly failing our kids right now, so we do need to create a well-rounded education for our kids and make sure that we can pay for it.
I'd like to,
We didn't cut a sixth grade teacher, we reallocated a staff member based on the student population.
We went from 3 teachers down to 2.
We didn't
And
reduce
your
his-
fifth grade.
We did
go-
not reduce a staff member.
Sure you did.
No, we actually increased our staff
No, you reduced the sixth grade team.
based on the population of students in
You
front.
have 42 kids and over half of them can't read. And you said it wasn't fiscally responsible.
Can we get back to
let's-
goals,
yeah.
please?
so let's try to,
And I think we have to be, I'm sorry, I'm gonna interrupt you for a minute, Kate, going back. We gotta be pretty careful, I think, in our commenting about whether kids are being failed or not.
They are.
Well, okay, because I think we have a staff that is putting together the best work that they can, and they're dealing with everything that they've been dealing with, and our responsibility is to help them do that.
I think this is a
It's
separate
not-
conversation
yeah.
other than goals, kinda like
It might
Brian
be,
said.
yeah.
Get back to goals, because now Nancy was cut off to get back to goals, but you're responding. I think we need to get back to goals.
Correct, but I think people need to hear that too.
okay, so let's try to, I think we're trying to get the most, all of us are trying to get the most information across in these goals that we can, without being too below our level and too specific and too wordy. So if we want to introduce, well-rounded education is a great phrase. I don't think anybody would disagree with that.
Right.
Maybe we just need to stick it in a different spot if it doesn't fit here. So let's try to look at financial and recognize that if we have to, we can go back to either of the ones that or the 3 that we've already done, and we can make some adjustments if we need to do that.
Or we could add 2 if we needed to under financial.
If we needed to do
Didn't
that, we
fit
could also do
together.
that.
I
So,
like to include the words maximize the opportunity.
okay, could you find a way to add that to the current financial goal?
Well, the current financial goal indicates to maintain responsible budget practices, and I don't think we have those.
What if we said, maximize opportunities in order to maintain a responsible budget?
Wayne, what do you think about that?
Could you say that again?
Maximize?
Maximize all opportunities in order to maintain a responsible budget. And then I would need help with the answer.
Well, would we want to just finish the rest of that sentence?
So responsible budget practices
Mhm.
to, well, no, because it would be maximize opportunities to maintain
Keep going.
Well, are we saying a responsible budget, or are we gonna say maintain responsible budget practices through the strategic use of resources in order to support our facilities and academic goals?
Yeah, so take out A.
I think that uses the word maximize, and the idea of opportunity is a little bit more specific to what we do, instead of moving into, you know, we would approve or not plans that were established by the team, I guess I would say. You know, it's not that, I think that keeps it at the board level by using it that way. If we
could also change maintain to enhance. If we don't all think we have a responsible budget right now, we could say enhance budget practices.
I don't know if I know how to do that. I'm not saying I'm not in agreement with changing the word, but I'm not sure I see enhance working.
I agree with you. I think maybe change the word maintain, but maybe enhance isn't the right.
Review.
What was that?
To review.
Review.
I think that works.
I like that. So maximize all opportunities in order to review responsible budget practices through the strategic use of resources in order to support our facilities and academic goals.
So could we use the well-rounded education at the end of that, or in replacement of something?
In order to support a well-rounded
Right.
education, which would
Take out the
include
academic goals.
Yeah, that's what I think.
facilities,
And
equipment, all,
yeah.
And we used in order in the first sentence. There was academic goals for,
What? No, if we were to, whatever the beginning was,
yep,
and when you got to in order to support our facilities and, please hold.
but then we're using it 3 times if we add it at the end.
We would say in order
The
to
well-rounded
support a
education?
well-rounded education.
To support,
I don't know if we're talking the same thing. Can you tell me what you have?
maximize all opportunities in order to review
Yep.
responsible budget practices through the strategic use of resources in order to support our
Oh,
facilities.
you're saying we're
Yeah,
using
so
in
put
order
the first
to
in order
again.
to.
Okay. Maximize all opportunities and review
yeah.
responsible budget practices through the strategic use of resources in order to support our facilities and academic goals.
We would say in order to support a well-rounded education.
Right, take academic goals out.
Perfect.
We're not keeping facilities?
That would be included in well-rounded.
Okay.
I think.
Well-rounded, takes care of everything, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
One more time?
Sure. Maximize all opportunities and review responsible budget practices through the strategic use of resources in order to support a well-rounded education.
Thoughts,
Good.
Superintendent?
If that's what you want your goal to be, then
It,
it makes sense to me.
how does it match in your mind to the strategic plan?
Well, I don't have the strategic plan in front of me.
Right, and I was trying to remember how that read.
I don't think it's drastically different.
I don't think it is either.
Or
I think it supports
maybe
it.
a little more, maybe a little more specific.
It needs to be more specific, or you think it doesn't need to
I'm
be?
saying, I don't think
Okay.
it's drastically different in nature, it's just more specific.
She absolutely, she'd love to. Would you mind reading? No.
Maximize all opportunities and review budget practices through the strategic use of resources in order to support a well-rounded education.
Can you switch review and then maximize your resources? Just change.
Review and maximize. Oh, I see.
So it would say review all opportunities and maximize responsible something? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I can't remember what her.
Neither can she, so.
I don't know if I like maximize.
Utilize whatever word it was.
It was maximize.
I don't have it in front
So
of me.
review all opportunities and maximize, no,
No, review. Your second part was review.
yep,
Maximize all
Your
opportunities for
first part
review.
was opportunities.
yep,
So switch the opportunities with review. So you're gonna review it first and then maximize or utilize or whatever word
right.
you're using now.
So review all opportunities would be first, instead of maximize.
No, you're saying review, review budget practices and maximize.
Yes.
Oh, okay, thank you.
It's just the order.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Only one of us got. I think this is the first time that we've done goals in public, so thank you for
Yep.
your patience.
Thanks for your
and
patience.
I'm sure Mr. Curtis could attest to, it goes just as clunky when no one's standing here looking at us, so. Okay. Can we all support that?
Yes.
So we literally took just the same sentence and just flopped the order. Realize that whatever you write down.
Don't make me read it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you read it one more time again?
Okay, so, the last one, so this was the addition from last year. If we wanna continue that, was planning, establish a process reviewing all district aspects through continued leadership development and long-term strategic planning for the success of the district.
Are we thinking of keeping the category of planning and changing it to safety?
I wonder.
Are we thinking of adding safety as a topic?
I think that we should have a safety goal.
So is it that no one has suggestions for planning then, if that's?
No, nobody suggested anything for planning.
So
How do we feel about possibly changing the category?
To, like, safety.
Yeah.
Is our strategic plan something that stays in place, gets enhanced year over year? What happens with that?
Yeah, it's usually a 5-year plan, but I'm not sure that safety actually necessarily fits exactly in your strategic plan the way it is, but your goal is not bad. I mean, provide a safe and productive educational environment for students and staff by creating a system that aligns with federal and state guidelines. That's a pretty clear goal.
Well, and I think our planning goal was based about the
Some of the things
strategic,
in the
yeah,
strategic
because we
plan.
knew that that
Okay.
was the direction, so maybe the planning goal is no longer really needed.
Relevant.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I guess that's what I'm trying to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that,
My question was that.
So the planning piece last year, if I remember correctly, the result of the planning piece was the strategic plan.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was remembering.
so we've kind of accomplished it.
Accomplish that.
Yeah,
So in year 2 or 3, you start reestablishing a new strategic plan?
You're always reevaluating, it's a working document.
So it just stays
Move it down.
5 years out, basically?
Yep, and then what you'll do is you reevaluate, and if you have to completely revise it, then you can. But
Okay.
it should be a working document, or a living document.
Sure.
okay, so could we support changing to safety?
Yeah, sure.
And I like that first goal.
I could get behind that as well.
Yep.
Awesome.
So we'll keep that first suggestion as is,
Yeah.
no changes? Cool, so you guys putting the pressure on. Okay, Kim has volunteered to type it up from her notes.
Sure thing.
Okay, great, thanks.
So you can drop it at the next meeting.
Yeah, if that's okay, and then we'll have them, you know,
Yep.
basically whatever Kim
Formalize.
types up.
Yep.
Formalize is a good word.
Otherwise, put it next one.
Any other questions about that? Does anyone have anything else for public session?
Well, it's Principal Appreciation Month, so I would like to say thank you to Ms. Hinman, especially to Mr. Van Norman and Mr. Taylor, who are here sun up to sundown. So happy Principal Appreciation Month to you.
Thank you.
Ms.
Is there an assistant one? Mr. Smiley, then you're in the group then.
There is a day. There is a day.
You don't get a day? Yeah, exactly. Everybody else gets a month. That's not fair.
Mrs. Smith will send you flowers.
It's gonna be a good day.
Yeah, that's-
You'll be the only one that gets flowers, right? Well, thank you then. Anyone else with anything for open session?
I have a question. I'm just wondering, when we were talking about the financials, the man was presenting, can we find out how long the community center has been operating in a deficit, or is that?
Since it opened. Since it opened?
So, right, so one of the things that we've been working on for the last couple of years is trying to get out of that deficit,
Okay.
obviously. COVID actually put us right back into it. We had started to creep in the other direction. When COVID hit, we literally had to close pieces of the community center or the whole community
Right.
center at some point. Right now, we actually have had a pretty positive cash flow this month.
In August, we did not have to transfer from the general fund.
Okay.
That's
Right.
great.
It
So,
supported itself.
so it's moving in the right direction. A lot of that is attributed to things that Dave Welcher is doing, the program that he's putting in place, and some of the improvements that the board.
Stuff we talked about.
Yeah,
we
like
talked about.
incentive stuff, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Last meeting, the numbers are increasing, and of course,
Okay.
now as the weather is starting to change, programs are gonna increase with numbers.
Okay.
I didn't mean to make a joke out of it. It's been a really long time.
No, and
We've talked about ways
this
to
is the
try to
first
fix
time
it.
I've ever
Yeah.
Yeah,
even, like,
absolutely.
thought, oh my gosh, there's a deficit, so, okay.
So what I'd like to do is ask Dave to come in a couple of months and actually present to you about what's going on in the community center and, talk about some of the adjustments. A lot of it is also equipment. There were issues with equipment 4 years ago. We put in budgets to be able to accommodate some of that. We have made some pretty significant changes in there, and I think anybody who's gone to the community center can see that it's a 20-year-old building, right? 20-year-old pool. So there's things that are going to need to be done and looked at over the course of the next couple building projects that are costly. Doing something with your pool is a pretty significant amount of money.
Have we looked into some grants to help replace all of the equipment? If there's anything available out there for that purpose?
We have replaced some of the equipment. We actually now have a budget that we didn't have before for some of that replacement, and we've also pulled things out of grants for replacing it as well. Our equipment actually is in fairly decent shape at this point in time. And quite frankly, we just don't have the room. I mean, if we had another physical footprint where we could expand, that would be helpful. We just don't have that right now. We've expanded into the other room, making kind of the cardio room, which actually was a temporary fix, but it seems to be pretty successful. So the intent is to really keep it there, but that gives us a decrease in what our extra community space can be. So we have to kind of tap into the high school building really if we're going to do that. And we can accommodate that in the high school. The LGI room works perfectly for those meeting spaces in the evening. So those are all pretty positive things.
Okay.
Jenny, did you have something?
I just wanted to just give a congratulations to a couple of our athletic programs. I know we had a student on the golf team that just qualified to represent us for Section 5, so I just want to say kudos to that. And our boys varsity soccer team just became league champions. So I just want to give kudos to our student athletes who are really working hard and doing a great job. I just love them.
Did they win tonight?
They did.
Okay.
I was gonna say, I've been waiting.
I was thinking that was at the end of your sentence, but I had to ask.
Yeah, they did.
That's what all the fire trucks
Yes.
going on was.
Yes.
It just clicked in my mind after you didn't pick up your phone, so I thought, oh, okay, maybe that's a congratulations to the team, so. Anybody else? Okay, I believe we have a particular personnel matter, so if I could have a motion to move into executive, please. Thank you, Mrs. Allen, and a second by Mr. Dates. Thanks for sticking through it tonight.